Wages and income are not synonymous with respect to labor, gain, or profit. Realizing the wage tax is not constitutional simplifies life by design. This page changed with the August 2nd, 2025 edit. Critical thinking exercise. Are employees generally paid the full value of their labor? If the employee is not receiving the full value, who benefits from the excess value not transferred to the employee? Employee labor creates value for the business. The business sells that labor value to their customers. When the employer sells the goods and services produced by the employee, this is a source of some of the employer's income, that gain which proceeds from labor. The wages and salary received by the employees are generally less in value than the income that the labor produced for the business. Thus, the business profits and gains from the labor. Logically, since the employee is not receiving the full value of their labor, the employee is working at a financial loss. Wages and salary are not taxable as income for the employee. Old dictionary time. Now it is time to discover what the Amendment 16 generation was actually granting. Definition images from the older dictionaries are at Glossary of Old Words. Some of those words are directly linked below where used. Congress passed Amendment 16 on July 2, 1909. The states ratified it on February 3, 1913. Theories exist that Amendment 16 never got enough states to ratify it. However, this presentation advances as though the Article 5 process was constitutionally completed. Amendment 16 grants the following power to Congress with a few restrictions. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. Amendment 16 specifically grants this power to Congress. This would prohibit the power to the states, but this can be discussed another time. Income, 1898. 3. The gain which proceeds from labor and other for-profit items listed as sources of income. Gain, 1898. That which is gained, obtained, or acquired as increase, profit, advantage, or benefit, opposed to loss. 2. Obtaining or amassing of profit or valuable possessions, acquisition, accumulation. Wages, 1898. A compensation given to a hired person for services, price paid for labor. Recompense, hire. See wage. Compensation, 1898. 2. That which constitutes or is regarded as an equivalent. That which makes good the lack or variation of something else. That which compensates for loss or privation. Amends, remuneration, recompense. 3. Law. B. A recompense or reward for some loss or service. Recompense, 1898. An equivalent returned for anything done, suffered, or given. Compensation, requital, suitable return. Since employees work at a financial loss based on the time and skill they provide to their employers, the Amendment 16 generation had no intent to tax the compensation for labor, but rather to tax that gain which proceeds from the labor. Constitutionally, wages are not taxable as income. However, there are 2 times prior to Amendment 13 that the nation's government directly taxed citizens via their income. So we quickly review them. Pre-1913 Constitution on Income or Direct Taxes. Because of the government's prior history with income tax between 1790 and the present, the remaining argument presents a more complete investigation. First, by way of the definitions. Second, the application. In 1790, the Constitution of the United States of America was contractually ratified in accord with the terms dictated in the Articles of Confederation, which was the Constitution that would be massively altered by way of a total replacement. The Constitution of the United States of America and its position on direct taxation. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this Union, according to the respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons. Congress approves a budget and determines each state's portion based on the 10-year enumeration. At the state level, the Declaration's tax authorization requirement, each body of state-registered voters are to consent as to what is to be taxed and by what rate in order to satisfy their state's portion of the tax. This was intended to keep the nation's government under the Article 5 control by the state and the governed people. This means that the state government paid this tax, not the individuals directly. It kept the federal government out of the people's private financial affairs and papers, protected by Amendment 4. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. This capitation tax and direct tax must be in proportion to the enumeration, because the Constitution never granted powers to do a census. This capitation or direct tax must also be paid directly by the state government, not the individual citizens directly. This direct tax is the same covered in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, and must be apportioned among the states because it uses the same apportioning enumeration. Income tax variations before 1913. Abraham Lincoln needed his Revenue Act of 1861, the first income tax, so he could fund his war. Lincoln's income tax violated the Constitution because it taxed individuals directly when it was supposed to be apportioned among the states, as seen above. Lincoln's tax expired in 1872, shortly after his war ended. Grover Cleveland's income tax, the tariff of 1894, Wilson-Gorham tax or tariff, was designed to shift the tax burden from the importers who directly profited to the general population, whether they bought the once tariffed products or not. Cleveland's tax ended in 1895 with a Supreme Court declaration that the acts violated the Constitution's direct tax clauses. Next is the present Woodrow Wilson income tax of 1913. Topic number 401, Wages and Salaries. By way of Amendment 16, it too was supposed to shift the tax burden from those who profited to that of the general population, shifting from tariffs to income tax. This also was a way to fund another global war they called World War I. With Amendment 16, every income tax practice and definition prior to 1913 ended and ceased to exist. So now we need only focus on Amendment 16 content itself, not the prior practices. The dual purpose of tariffs is to protect the domestic jobs and economy, as well as funding constitutionally authorized government activity, the common defense, and general welfare of the nation. When Amendment 16 passed, it altered every aspect of the income tax practices before 1913. From here, we focus on Amendment 16 and its various elements. Dissecting Amendment 16. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. Powers granted and not granted. 1. Lay and collect taxes on income. 2. However, the from whatever source derived allows Congress to pick and choose what types of actual income are taxed, and at what rate. 3. Amendment 14, Section 1, Equal protection of the laws. The poll tax, head tax, or capitation tax seems to be equal. Everyone pays just about the exact same dollar amount. However, everyone does not possess the same physical or mental capabilities to pay the same dollar value without financially harming themselves. On the other hand, taxing the same percentage rate on that which is actual income, gain, profit, etc., those who have more still pay the same percent on each dollar as the person in poverty for each dollar of actual income they receive. The individual is not punished with a higher rate for doing or having more, nor is the person rewarded with a lower rate for doing or having less. Number 4. Amendment 16 does not specifically define what is income. The enforceable definition must be in accord with how the 1913 population defined income from their common dictionaries. Number 5. Congress cannot define or redefine what is income. The power is not granted. It requires an Article 5 amendment process. Number 6. The tax cannot be apportioned among the several states. Number 7. The tax cannot use any census. The Constitution never authorized government to do a census at all. See the unconstitutional census. These tax forms also violate Amendment 4 by demanding access to private papers without a specific warrant. Number 8. It cannot require filing the present IRS forms because by pre-Amendment 16 definitions, they are an annual census. Number 9. It cannot use an enumeration. Number 10. Congress cannot use income definitions contained in prior income tax attempts. Are wages and salary taxable as income? The Constitution of the United States of America, Amendment 16, authorizes Congress to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived. It does not grant power to define and redefine what is income. As was done with census, we check the definition evolution for wages and income from 1828 through 2024. Caution must be exercised when selecting the dictionary from which to define Amendment 16 words. How did the 1913 generation define wages and income? It is likely that many citizens possessed an 1898 dictionary. However, it is not likely that they possessed a 1913 dictionary. Old dictionary time. What is income? And are wages and income synonymous? with respect to Amendment 16's income tax? Definition evolution for income and wages, pre and post Amendment 16. Income, 1828. 1. That gain which proceeds from labor, business, or property of any kind, the produce of a farm, the rent of houses, the proceeds of professional business, the profit of commerce or of occupation, the interest of money or stock in funds. Income is often used synonymously with revenue, but income is more generally applied to the gain of private persons, and revenue to that of a sovereign or of a state. We speak of an annual income of gentlemen and an annual revenue of the state. Notice the gain from labor, profits of commerce or of occupation, the interest of money, the gain of private persons. No mention of wages, salary, or compensation, yet all are connected to labor. Income, 1898. 3. The gain which proceeds from labor, business, property, or capital of any kind, as the produce of a farm, the rent of houses, the proceeds of a professional business, the profits of commerce or of occupation, or the interest of money or stocks and funds, etc. Revenue, receipts, salary, especially the annual receipts of a private person or a corporation from property, as a large income. Notice the gain which proceeds from labor, profits of commerce or of occupation, the interest of money. This includes salary, but not yet wages or income. Salary is paid to management, wages to the unskilled laborer. Income, 1916. Number 3. That gain which proceeds from labor, business, or property, revenue, receipts, wages, or salary. 3b. Synonyms: profit, proceeds, interest, emoluments, produce. Income tax, 1916. A tax on a person's income, emoluments, profits, etc., or on the excess over a certain amount. Notice, only 3 years after passing Amendment 16, the dictionaries began altering the constitutional definition for income established prior to 1913. The 1916 definition now includes wages or salary. The IRS, topic number 401, wages and salaries, it states, all wages, salaries, and tips you receive for performing services as an employee of an employer be included in your gross income. End quote. This IRS topic changes the pre-1913 definitions for what is income by now specifically including that which was expressly excluded by referring to only the gain which proceeds from labor. Income, 1960, number 2. The money or other gain periodically received by an individual, corporation, etc., for labor or services, or from property, investments, operations, etc., abbreviated INC. Income tax, 1960. A tax on income or on that part of income which exceeds a certain amount. The 1960 word definition excludes wages and salary because that money or labor is not a gain. It is a loss based on the profits gained by the employer that are not passed on to the employee. Income, 2024. Money received especially on a regular basis for work or through investments. Wages, 1828. 5. To take to hire for pay, to employ for wages as waged soldiers. Wages, 1828. 1. Hire, reward, that for which is paid or stipulated for services, but chiefly for services by manual labor, or for the military and naval services. We speak of a servant's wages, a laborer's wages, a soldier's wages, but we never apply the word to the rewards given to men in office, which are called fee or salary. The word is, however, sometimes applied to the compensation given to representatives in the legislature. Wages, 1898. Number 2. That for which one labors, meed, reward, stipulated payment. At present, used in the plural. See wages. Wages, 1898. A compensation given to a hired person for services. Price paid for labor. Recompense, hire. See wage. Number 2. Compensate, 1898. To make amends, to supply an equivalent, followed by for, as when nothing can compensate for the loss of reputation. Compensation, 1898. Number 2. That which constitutes or is regarded as an equivalent, that which makes good the lack or variation of something else, that which compensates for loss or privation, amends, remuneration, recompense. Recompense, 1898. 2. To return an equivalent for, to give compensation for, to atone for, to pay for. 3. To give in return, to pay back, to pay as something earned or deserved. An equivalent returned for anything done, suffered, or given. Compensation, requital. Suitable, return. Note, wages so far is nothing more than an employer repaying a debt to the employee for the labor they provided to the employer. Rarely does the employer make an equivalent or greater return in cash to the employee for the services performed. Employees are rarely compensated the full value of the labor they perform. As such, the employee works to a financial loss in comparison to the value of the service provided. Wage, 1916. 2. That for which is pledged or paid for services, hire, pay, chiefly in the plural. Wages, 1916. 1. Specifically, pay given for labor, usually manual or mechanical, at short stated intervals, as distinguished from salary or fee. Wages, 2024. A fixed regular payment, typically paid on a daily or weekly basis, made by an employer to an employee, especially to a manual unskilled worker. Up to this, 1898, wages has been, as it states in the 1898 definition, a compensation paid for labor. It was never considered a gain for the person to whom it was paid, but merely an agreed reimbursement. Living document. Yes, the Constitution of the United States of America is a living document in that it is supposed to be kept current with the ever-changing society. That is the purpose for Article 5. That amendment process does not include the use of more modern dictionaries to redefine constitutional content to make it appear as though congressional acts comply with constitutional restraints. If an error of omission was made in the Constitution or one of the amendments at the time it was ratified, simply propose another amendment to clear up the matter. When the government uses an unconstitutional way of adjusting or redefining words used in the Constitution, this directly violates the Article 5 amendment process. In violating the Constitution, Congress commits treason as detailed in Article 3, Section 3. Even if the definitions were not successfully defended, even if you disagree with the definitions regarding wages not being a gain and not being taxable as income, the IRS tax code violates Amendment 16 by using at least one of two forms of a census and/or an enumeration to determine the variable rates to tax the rich with a higher percentage rate than the poor. And with the use of a census or an enumeration, the tax code violates Amendment 16, and no citizen is obligated to obey unconstitutional laws. Up next, unconstitutionally applied income tax and wage tax. Replaced. Go to equality with taxation. Governments derive their just power from the consent of the governed. 1776. The governed, by design, are intended to work together as a unified body, controlling the government's powers, equally protecting each other's rights. Share to help get and keep clean, honest government. End page content.